Hello there and welcome. My name is Adam and I'm the creator of Mind Map Renovations, an innovative framework that helps you live with intention, collaborate with your mind, and unlock that great potential. Today, I'd like to spend some time sharing some techniques with you about how to effectively communicate with your subconscious. Now, we've talked a couple times about how the subconscious processes far more data than your conscious mind, about 11 million bits of data per second on the subconscious side, 40 to 50 bits per second on the conscious side. So it is immensely useful to be able to communicate with your subconscious, which is, by the way, a two-way street. The subconscious has ways to communicate with you, and you have ways to communicate with your subconscious. And the more you can open up those lanes of communication, the better. And if you've been able to remember a dream ever that you've had, you know how abstract the subconscious can be. So just using words, which is usually how we think about communication, is probably not going to be enough when it comes to really effectively collaborating with the subconscious. Before we hop into how to communicate with the subconscious, I just want to spend a couple minutes talking about how the subconscious communicates with us. So the subconscious is running a lot of our bodily functions, our autonomic system. And when we have a racing heart or sweaty palms or our breath is a little short, anything of that nature is typically the subconscious has clued into something around them. Some association has been triggered and it's giving you a response. That's its way to communicate with you, and it expects you, your conscious mind, to do something about that. And the subconscious doesn't always get it right. The subconscious is not always aligned with our present day mindset because a lot of the associations, a lot of the core programming that we have that our subconscious is running off of is actually built between the ages of brand new, born, and 7 years old. So a lot of the stuff that we're working off of might be outdated programming, which is a great reason to renovate your mind. So I have an example that really speaks to me when I read it for the first time in Dr. van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps a Score. Highly recommended, amazing book. But in that book, he talks about a use case with a troubled young boy who had an abusive home life, particularly his father, and he was in the care of the state. And he was doing okay. His therapy was going well, but they observed him having a very negative reaction to a new teacher that had come in, a new instructor. And there was really no logical reason for this to happen. He would just immediately have behavioral issues. He kind of shut down. He wouldn't do his work. He wouldn't want to interact with that teacher. And it wasn't until Dr. van der Kolk witnessed the visitation of this young boy's father that he realized the connection. The connection was the young boy's father and this instructor both wore the same cologne. And so that young boy had associated that cologne with his father. His subconscious was cluing him into danger. His conscious behavior was then affected by that association, but he couldn't really tell anybody why that was. I mean, in addition to the fact that he was just a young child, it sometimes can be difficult to link, even as adults, the reason we're responding a certain way with a conscious tie. So the subconscious is like I mentioned, just trying to help. It's trying to do its best for us and look out for us. It wants us to survive and be happy, but it doesn't always know the best way to do that. But you probably consciously know the things that you want to happen, and that is what we're going to talk about when it comes to what you are communicating to your subconscious, because in order to have that really good back and forth, you want to be very clear about what it is that you want and sometimes what you don't want. So, as mentioned, the subconscious is a little bit of an abstract creature. And for that reason, words are not going to necessarily be the best vehicle to communicate with it. This is where we need to tag in our imagination. And specifically, our imagination when it comes to visual, auditory, and kinesthetic memory or modalities. So modality is an NLP term, but broadly speaking, it's really referring to how we experience the world, right? So the majority of folks are very visual in terms of their modality preference, meaning that when they call up a memory, they're pretty much seeing a picture. That's probably what their main memory is going to be. There are a percentage of folks that are more auditory in terms of their preference, and they're probably going to remember what something sounded like when they are calling forward a memory, or if they think fondly of somebody, maybe they are thinking of their voice and how it sounds and what that experience is like for them. Kinesthetic folks, there is a population of folks that do have a preference for kinesthetic, and that's touch, that's feeling. And so when they're remembering things or conjuring images, they're thinking about what it felt like, either physically or emotionally. When it comes to communicating with your subconscious, it will definitely be helpful for you to know which modality preference you have. Are you more visual? Are you more auditory? Are you more kinesthetic? That's going to help speed up this communication process with your subconscious. So when we're communicating with our subconscious, one of the best ways that we can do that is to visualize. So when you think about, if I just describe to you this scene, this landscape scene, and there's a valley, and there's some flowers, and a river that runs through it, your imagination of what that looks like is going to be so different from mine or just anyone else who's going through that same exercise, because it's leaving a lot up for interpretation. So imagine when you tell your subconscious what you want in words only, there's a lot left up to interpretation, and so the end result might be your subconscious's best effort to give you what you wanted, but maybe not hitting the mark. So what can we do? We can visualize. So in sports, one of the number one things that athletes say that that benefits their performance the most is visualization. So imagine that golf ball dropping into that cup. Imagine that basketball going into that hoop. Visualize it, and that's going to align your body, which your subconscious is very much in charge of, with your conscious actions. Just like that example I gave before from the book The Body Keeps the Score, oftentimes when our subconscious is doing something that is not serving us or is sometimes even sabotaging us, it's because it's experiencing some sort of threat detection, and it might even be a survival response. The problem with threat responses in the modern day world is that we tend to see way more threats than are actually out there. We tend to be on high alert because, again, our subconscious is trying to do us a favor. It is trying to help us, and it just doesn't always get it right all the time. So what we need to do is we need to be able to communicate with our subconscious to let it know that something that it perceives as a threat is actually not as much of a threat as we might believe in that instinctual place. So how do we do that? We do that through our imagination, through modalities. So let's play a little bit on that example I provided earlier from The Body Keeps the Score. But instead, let's say that your ex-partner wore a perfume or a cologne that you liked at the time, but since you broke up with that person, you just don't like it anymore. It just, anytime you smell it, it drives you nuts. You don't have a good feeling. You just want to get away. Well, say that you meet a new person, and that new person wears that very same perfume or cologne. What do you do then? They're perfect for you. You like them, but you just can't get over that smell. Here's what we can do. When you think about these two people, you can close your eyes and you can imagine the two people as one. Maybe you've got an overlay. You've got one person standing in front of the other one. And what you want to do is you want to visually separate those two people. And however this manifests for you, whatever makes sense for you, go with it, because every mind map is going to be different, and what works for you may not work for somebody else. But the most important thing here is the visualization aspect. Whatever you can do to physically separate these two people. Another thing that you can do is you can change the parts or aspects of the modality, right? So if you're imagining two people standing there, you can bring the person that you'd like to get to know better closer to you in your imagination. Just make their image larger. And then you can push away the other image, the person that you don't like, that ex-partner that just you don't want in your life. You push them away while you pull the other one forward. And this is an effective way for your subconscious to know, okay, this person's safe. This person is not in the picture. This person is not associated with this other person. It is a powerful way for your subconscious to say, oh, I got it. Okay, programming updated. So pretty powerful when you think about it. If there is a person who's voice you just can't stand, it just grates on you and it just drives you nuts every time you hear it, you can do the same kind of thing. Conjure your imagination, imagine that voice really, really close, like just right in your ear, because that's how you experience it, and then push it away. Push it away as far as it can go, and still that you can still hear it. It's still there, but it doesn't bother you. It's not testing your threat response. So say that there's a kinesthetic example where when you're in a certain situation, there's just a bodily feeling that you don't like, and maybe you feel it in your gut, in your belly. And maybe if you can think about it, it even has a shape. Maybe it's a blob, maybe it's round, maybe it's like a triangle of discomfort. Whatever that is, just see if you can shrink it. You can make it small, and this is essentially telling your subconscious it's not a problem, it's not a big deal. So there are some really great ways that you can level set with your subconscious through just using a little bit of intentional thought, leveraging your ability to tell a story without words. When you think about the different ways that you think day to day, you're probably already using some of these skills, but this is the intentional deployment of these skills. It also requires you to notice that something bad is happening, so it's going to prompt you to tune into your responses a little bit more. Like I mentioned, anytime that your subconscious is trying to talk to you, it's going to give you some sort of indicator. It's going to, maybe your body temperature will rise, maybe your body temperature will go down. Maybe you will start to feel like you have a lot of energy, a lot of pent up energy. Maybe you'll feel exhausted. All of these things are happening in response to one thing or the other, and you don't want to ignore them. You want to get curious about them. When you get curious, that's when you're able to be more intentional about how you're going to deal with those situations. Now, if you struggle with any of these techniques, if you find it difficult to communicate effectively with your subconscious, there is good news. Lots of NLP coaches are out there ready and willing to help you out on this. And also, another great option for you is potentially hypnotherapy. Hypnotherapy is literally just the exercise of communicating with your subconscious. It's kind of boring the conscious mind into going away so that the subconscious can be communicated with directly. So definitely consider it as an option. It's a really great way to kind of get in touch with yourself. So let's recap what we've talked about today. We've talked about the fact that your subconscious communicates with you through physiological responses, and that you have the ability to communicate with your subconscious through the use of your intentional imagination. Instead of using words or self-talk, which we definitely will talk about another time, you can use images, auditory, kinesthetic inputs to actively imagine scenarios in which you want your subconscious to update to, based on what it is that you know you want from your life, what your goals are, and what you consciously want out of situations, rather than being controlled by your subconscious. You want to update that programming so that you guys are both on the same page. So your call to action, your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to see if you can put this technique into practice. See if it works for you. See what you learn about yourself when you start to collaborate and communicate a little bit more with your subconscious. What can you control in your everyday life that maybe eluded you before? The possibilities are endless. And I hope that you got some value out of learning this technique. I hope that you have a new tool that you can put into your toolbox. I look forward to sharing more with you as time goes on. Until I see you again, I invite you to always be nice to yourself.